Welcome to this week's ASRC CEO Bulletin. There's been a huge last week and there's lots to share with you. But number one, this Sunday is Run for Refugees, our annual fundraising event for the ASRC. Thank you to the 250 plus people who are running, and hopefully we're going to raise our $150,000 target. If you're not running, God knows I could do with a sponsorship. And if you just Google Run for Refugees, you'll see my page and sponsor me. I'm running a half a marathon on Sunday and I'm going to suffer terribly as a consequence of it. On more bright and lighter news, at the moment the ASRC is working on feeding back into a new national settlement framework. On Monday we got to be part of an Office of Multicultural Affairs roundtable, and it's a wonderful opportunity for the ASRC to highlight the fact that asylum seekers need to be part of any settlement framework, and they're given that 80 to 90% of asylum seekers will be future Australian citizens. Investing early in access to education, employment, housing, settlement, integration are critical in nurturing the next generation of successful Australians. Here's a couple of quick facts you could use the next time someone tells you that multiculturalism is failing or that immigration is a burden to the economy. Do you know that 66% of migrants and refugees to Australia are in fact people with an academic or trade qualification? This contrasts to just 56% of Australian-born people having a similar qualification. Do you also know that 48.2% of all Victorians are either born overseas or have a parent born overseas? So much for the failure of multiculturalism. We're doing a lot of wonderful networking to try to build partnerships to keep changing attitudes towards asylum seekers. And at the heart of that are finding our champions of change. We're doing some very exciting work with the ACTU, National Australia Bank, La Trobe University, RMIT, a whole range of wonderful organizations, institutions coming together, trying to find practical ways of making a positive difference to the lives of asylum seekers. The other day I had the Rotary Club come along as well, which was wonderful, looking at how they can keep supporting our work with young people. And last Tuesday I spoke to an audience of some 500 at the Australian International Education Conference, talking about the significance and importance of investing in education for asylum seekers. This afternoon I'm off to Springvale to talk about the way in which the ASRC can help build capacity in that region to support asylum seekers coming out of detention. And we're already going to be starting next week a pilot project providing job clubs, resume assistance for asylum seekers coming out of detention, mainly Hazaras and Tamils in the Dandenong area, and we'll be focusing on that as a really wonderful way of making a difference and getting out there. We're soon to be starting our next social enterprise, which I'm really excited about as well, which is going to be a cleaning and household service staffed by asylum seekers, and again providing a wonderful employment pathway for asylum seekers. We're also soon to begin hopefully another new social enterprise coming up in the coming 12 months as well, which I'll share with you with short time to come as well. But it's very exciting. We're really looking at how do we keep building employment as an outcome. We had other wonderful news, and we had 4 more of our asylum seekers get permanent protection visas last week, which was a wonderful success as well. Placed 7 more people into work, which is again another wonderful example of the success of the ASRC on the ground. On a final note, guys, I want to share with you what the ASIO decision of the High Court meant last Friday. It was a really good decision. At its heart, it simply said it is not the role of ASIO to determine whether or not a person is a refugee. At its heart, it said you cannot indefinitely detain asylum seekers without deciding their refugee claims. And that again, it's not the role of ASIO to be the basis upon which a person is refused the initial grant of a refugee visa. Why the decision is significant is that it ends what is in fact our equivalent of Guantanamo Bay, which has been the indefinite detention of people without knowing the reasons why, and not knowing how to appeal it or having a process to do so. For any Australians sitting out there and criticising that decision, simply say this to them. If you were ever locked up, wouldn't you want to know why? And wouldn't you want the simple basic human right to challenge the reasons why? And that's simply what the court has ruled. The court didn't go far enough in that it didn't say that ASIO is required to tell people the reasons for an adverse finding, saying that it's enough that ASIO gives people an interview to put forward their case. Tricky when often ASIO won't actually flag the particular areas of concern. But it was heartening to see a number of High Court judges flag that they would overturn the idea of the indefinite detention of asylum seekers, which is currently law in this country. So that's also exciting news. What does it practically mean? Well, for the 51 asylum seekers that have been indefinitely in detention as a consequence of a negative adverse ASIO findings, and in detention for collectively over a century, what we hope and what we're calling on the government to do is to release all of them. Today being World Mental Health Day, there's not just that 51, but 470 asylum seekers who have appallingly been in detention for more than 730 days. And research shows you that after 6 months, people will start becoming mentally unwell in detention in quite severe ways. So we're calling the government to release the 51 people that have been kept indefinitely because of ASIO findings. The government still has the power, and this is what the High Court fundamentally ruled in dismissing ASIO's role in this. The Minister of Immigration still has the power, if any of these people are genuinely a security risk, which we're skeptical of, they can find that person to be a refugee, cite Article 1F of the Refugee Convention, and then refuse a person a protection visa by cancelling it under Section 501 of the Migration Act. At least asylum seekers now will have the basic human right they did not have before, which is the right to seek review from the Administrative Appeals Tribunal and then the Supreme Court. So we see it as a victory for human rights, and we call on Morrison and Nicola Roxon to not go introducing vexatious new laws that are not required. Sadly, today as well, Parliament approved the designation of Manus Island as a second offshore processing centre. Think about PNG as a country that in itself creates refugees. Just last week we had a PNG woman accepted as a refugee fleeing that country. And that's exactly where we're about to start sending people to. And on a final note, to give you some perspective, yesterday in Parliament, the Gillard government cut funding, income support to 100,000 sole parents and their kids. 100,000 over 4 years to save 728 million. Now, they can find 5 billion for offshore processing, but can't find that money for poor working class single parents, forcing them to further poverty and destitution. That says it all, doesn't it? Till next week, good luck this Sunday if you're running and walking. Thank you for your support. I'll see you at the Retreat Pub on Sydney Road, Brunswick from midday for a well-earned hot chip and drink. And please sponsor me if you're not running. I really would love your support. Thanks guys, take care. Go strong.